Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to, what's today? It's Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday. Uh, Sean is here. Good morning, Sean. Whoops. There we go. Sean's here. Good morning, Sean. Hamad is here. Good morning, Hamad. Simran is here. Good morning, Simran. Basil's here. Good morning, Basil. Um, Other Basil is here. Good morning to you, sir. And Hassan is here. Good morning, Hassan. So, um, yeah, let's jump in where we left off here yesterday. So we were talking about, um, we were walking our way through this article, right, with Jordan Peterson, and we were kind of, we were using this opportunity to sort of exercise our critical thinking skills, right? So we were looking at the idea that there are two arguments in this article. Jordan Peterson is making one argument, and the university and sort of trans activists are making another argument, right? And so we walked through these and we tried to figure out um, what the arguments were, and were they valid, right? Should we consider them, right? And so I think if I remember, we came up with something like this for Jordan Peterson, right? We said that he felt that the university shouldn't be forcing him to use gender neutral pronouns, and he thought so because he felt that if he used this language, it would lead to some sort of totalitarianism, which was a little strange. Good morning. He felt that if he was forced to use this language, it would empower power-mad people somehow. Um, he felt that maybe using this language was a violation of his academic freedom, right, or of his right to free speech, right? And I think we analyzed this argument. We looked at it to see whether the premises logically supported the conclusion, and we looked at it to see if the premises were true, right? And I think we decided that yes, the premises logically supported the conclusion. So these premises are all reasons why you might not want to use certain language. But then I think we got tripped up in the truth of it, right? Were these statements actually true? And I think we said the last two statements were probably not, right? And the first two are quite a stretch, right? It's hard to know how using different pronouns could lead to a dictatorship in Canada, right? That's not intuitively understood, right? We don't really know how that would happen. And so I'm sure he has some sort of explanation of how that works, but in this article here, we can't see it, right? So we kind of have a bit of a good morning. I think we agreed we have a bit of a questionable argument here, right? We have premises that are not true. And again, if the reasons to believe something are not true, should we believe the conclusion? If it's based on false premises? No. Well, we shouldn't, right? I mean, you shouldn't, you can't believe an argument if the premises it supported are untrue. Well, I guess you can believe it, but it's probably not a good idea, right? And then we looked at the other argument here, and so the conclusion was that yes, and I've got a bit of a typo in the conclusion there, but university staff and students that shouldn't say forced, should use gender neutral pronouns at people's request. And the premises that I think we pulled out were that people have the right not to be discriminated against, right? And discrimination and not accepting transgender people creates a space for others to kind of express their prejudice and to sort of threaten these people. And using a university asking a professor to use certain language is not a limit on academic freedom, right? And it's not a limit on people's freedom of speech as well, right? He's an employee of the university, right? And he has a certain code of conduct to follow, right? As do I, right? There's things I just cannot do in this classroom, right? Columbia College will not let me. Granted, I don't want to do them, right? Because I'm a professional, but yeah, I have a code of conduct to follow. And if I don't follow that code of conduct, yeah, there'll be consequences for me too, right? And that's not freedom of speech. That's simply I have a job to do and a respectful, safe environment to provide, right? So we analyzed this argument, and I think what we came up with was that this one was good, right? They were all the premises logically supported the conclusion. These are all reasons why we might want to use this language, and all of those premises are true as well, right? And so, do you think it's kind of surprising that the university professor does not have a good argument in this case? Like, would you have thought that he would have had a stronger argument?
He's a professor, but he's a tenure professor. He must have had much better knowledge than the other students.
Well, that's the thing, right? In that, there's a, and I don't want to take too many shots at Jordan Peterson here, just in case he's watching my YouTube channel. I doubt he is, but just in case. I don't want to wind up in a debate with him. But yeah, like, knowledge is one thing, and I'm sure he knows a lot of things. Good morning. I'm sure he knows a lot of things, but he's not really creating a very good argument here, right? It's kind of a weak one. And to be honest with you, I think I know the kind of things he's talking about here, but he's not explaining them very well, and he's not he's not demonstrating them in a clear argument, and so it kind of comes off a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for here? It comes off a little bit kind of like it comes off a little crazy, right? To talking about some of these things, and again, I think I know, with these first premises. Good morning. With these first premises, I think I know what he's trying to do. I think I know where he's trying to go, but the way that he's phrased them, just it makes it impossible for anyone to believe them, because yeah, I don't know, yeah, it just sounds like crazy raving, right? That's kind of what it sounds like, and it's hard to really know what he's getting at. So I asked you those two questions. Whose argument do you believe? One or the other, or neither?
The university.
The what?
The university.
The university. Why do you think that's the better argument?
Their premises, they're much more valid than the professor.
Yeah, that's true, right? They have valid premises, right? They've constructed a good argument. Do you think this is an important issue? This issue of pronouns? I mean, Jordan Peterson thinks it's important enough to risk his career on, although hasn't really damaged his career. It's actually, made it better. But he thought it was an important issue. Do you think it is?
It depends who you are.
It depends who you are?
What if a non-binary person, it would be a huge issue. But as this woman,
It's not a big issue to you? No.
Same, like, honestly, like, I don't care unless it bothers me. Yeah. And, like, if people want me to use the pronouns, like, if they ask me, I'll use it.
yeah, like it's not a big deal. Like if someone
Instead of
just
getting
like-
into an argument, it's different.
Yeah, well, it is pretty easy. It is pretty easy, right? I mean, it's not hard to learn a couple of new words, right? And maybe you'll stumble over them the first few times, but that's kind of the way it is just when you learn students' names, right? Like, I have, not so much now, but pre-COVID, I probably had to learn 75 new names every term, and so, it's a bit of a, it takes a bit of work, right, to learn everybody's name and remember it, but it's not that hard, right? The guy's a university professor. I assume he has a good memory. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, right? But for some reason, he thinks it is a big deal. Can you think of any other reasons why he might have decided that this was worth fighting about?
Like I said earlier, he just had a problem with the human resource department, and he's been waiting for some opportunity to lash out against him, and now he got it.
Sure. Yeah, maybe he has. Yeah, maybe he has an axe to grind, as they say, right? Maybe he doesn't like HR or doesn't like the university, and this is his opportunity to, cause a big fuss about it, right? Maybe it's not about transgender people or pronouns at all, right? Maybe it's about some sort of internal politics at the university. Who knows, right? It's possible. Anything else?
He
Any
could use his argument. He could use it to prove certain
Could be, yeah. Maybe he's really thoroughly convinced that, this language will take us down some sort of road of doom, or who knows? Who knows what he's trying to say, right? So yeah, and I suspect you're probably right, Victoria. He probably does. He probably does believe it. I don't think he's just throwing out a bunch of crap. I think he believes it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that one's really interesting. I think it's interesting because he's decided to make such a big deal about this. Do you think, and it's hard to really know, but do you think he actually has any prejudice against transgender people? Do you think that might be part of it as well?
Because there are students.
And he's just kind of covering it up with some of the things he said here?
No, I don't see any prejudice.
You don't think so? No?
I think so, because if someone, like if the professor didn't have any prejudice, he wouldn't say this kind of things, knowing the consequences it could have against them.
That's probably true, right? Although again, with tenure, he's got
A lot of times
He's
students and stuff.
he's pretty much bulletproof. Sorry, what was that?
He's been a professor for so long, and he has had many transgender students in his class. It hadn't been an issue until the university asked to use pronouns,
Right.
which I think he didn't like, and said I don't like it.
Okay, that's a good observation, right? So why now, right? We could assume that maybe he's had transgender students before, but only when the letter got sent out does this become a big issue, right? Although his wife did say that he'd been writing about this kind of thing for a while, but she was talking about political correctness, so I don't know if it I don't know if it has to do with transgender people or not.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How is changing the pronouns being politically correct?
How is what?
Like how is using the pronouns they ask you to being politically correct?
How is it politically correct?
Yeah, to use the
Uh,
using the right like the pronouns they ask you to is that politically correct?
well, political correctness has to do with speaking in a certain way to ensure that other people aren't offended by what you say. And it particularly has to do with people in minoritized groups, so race or gender or whatever. And again, we looked it up. You may not have been here at that point, but we looked it up, and I added in the fact that that's what it means, but then there's also a lot of people who kind of roll their eyes at political correctness because they feel that, oh, now I can't say how things really are because you've got to be politically correct, so I'll just say this. So they ridicule it a little bit. But yeah, so I guess you can see this as political correctness in terms of, yeah, it's, using gender appropriate pronouns is politically correct, especially when you're talking about transgender people. But on a larger scale, using the correct pronouns is just common courtesy, right? I'm not going to refer to you as a he, Victoria, right? Like it's just, that's not, yeah. And actually, depending on how you use those things, it can go over the line from from sort of being rude to actually like bullying someone. There's a show I used to watch, and it's a good show, but it's got some problems with it. And the show's called Scrubs, and it takes place it's kind of a comedy show, but it takes place in a hospital. And the main character is kind of, he's not the manliest of men, we'll say. But his mentor, the guy who is teaching him, is a very manly man. And so he calls this person, he's an intern for him, he calls him a different girl's name every time. So he never calls him by his real name, he just calls him a girl's name, and it's a different girl's name every time he addresses him, right? And so, again, that's a little bit of, he's almost bullying him a little bit, right? So he's kind of telling him to man up, if you will. So again, you can, there's political correctness and there's just common courtesy, right? And the way language works, but you can also use it to, to hurt other people, right? Anything else we should say about this before we move on?
Like, I just want to talk about one scene that happened in the USA.
Okay.
So there was a cashier, I'm pretty sure he was not looking at what the person is.
Yeah.
So just by looking at the hat, he's like, maybe it's a guy.
Sure.
So he says, thank you, sir. But then it was like a transgender.
Oh yeah.
So he goes like, yes ma'am, and he starts screaming and starts breaking everything around.
Oh, the customer starts? Yeah.
So like, isn't that misuse of his?
It's a bit of an overreaction, right? Like, again, people are going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes, and it's tough, right? It's tough for transgender people because they're going to endure a lot of microaggressions. They're going to endure a lot of stares and inappropriate comments. And so, yeah, maybe the person had a bad day, and then, this guy makes a mistake because he's not paying attention. It doesn't excuse this person from, trashing the store. But, yeah, I mean, sometimes you make mistakes. When I was younger, I worked at a Mr. Lube changing oil. And the person who came in, and they drove in their car, and I was talking to them and typing in their information in the computer, and I could not discern what gender this person was. They were like kind of perfectly somehow in the middle, and I was, their clothes weren't really gendered, and I was talking to them, and I didn't see a purse in the car, but then I wasn't sure, and I typed in the name in the computer, and it just gave me a first initial. It didn't give me a name, and I was like, oh, I still can't tell. And we serviced this person's car, and they drove out and went on their way, and I never figured it out. And so I had to sort of avoid pronouns for the whole time because I could not tell. I had no evidence one way or the other, and yeah, I felt like it would have been pretty rude of me to ask what someone's gender was. So yeah, sometimes there's going to be mistakes made. Sometimes it's going to be awkward. Sometimes people might not be able to tell. Like, I did my best to try to figure it out, but I could not figure it out. And so yeah, it's difficult because transgender people have to put up with a lot of garbage from people, and then in addition to that, there's people who just make an honest mistake, right? And again, one of the things I'd like to drive home in this course is that we're all capable of making mistakes, right? We're all capable of having prejudices we weren't aware of. We're all capable of sort of discriminating without really noticing what we're doing, and that's okay as long as we kind of work to rectify that behavior. But humans are not perfect, right? We're prone to errors, unfortunately. So yeah, but yeah, sometimes people just make mistakes, don't pay attention. Right. Okie dokie. Let's leave Jordan Peterson here because he has I don't know. He's a wild story. He was injured a while ago. I forget what it was, and then he was given painkillers by his doctor and then he became addicted to the painkillers, and then his daughter, to get him to cure his addiction, his daughter took him to Russia, where they put him in a coma to get him to sort of detox while he was in a coma, and then they woke him up and then brought him back here. It's the craziest story. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna leave Jordan Peterson for a while because that's as much of him as I can deal with right now. Okay, so when we started this chapter, we said we were going to look at sexism, and we were going to look at it in particular through the lens of popular culture, right? And so let's look at advertising. Poom and Ryan, let's look at advertising, okay? So how many of you think you are affected by advertising? Yeah? What kind of ads would you say really work well on you? Like discount sales? Okay. So when you see like sale, Rafay is like, I'm there, right? Okay. What else? What other kind of ads really work on you?
Something innovative.
Something innovative?
Yeah, like a new technology just came out.
Right.
It seems interesting.
Yeah, new tech is very sexy and alluring, right? A new iPhone or some sort of new technology, right? What else? What other kind of ads work well on you, would you say? Food, maybe? You know, when you see an ad for pizza and they take the piece of pizza out and the cheese stretches. Oh my God, right? No? Rafay's saying no? Doesn't do it?
I get nauseous.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of food.
At pizza or cheese or
In pizza.
in pizza? Oh, that's too bad. Okay, we'll eat your pizza for you. It won't go to waste, we promise. Okay, so whether or not you really believe that ads kind of work on you, I will tell you that they do in some way, right? Maybe not the pizza thing if it grosses you out, but they work, right? Advertising is a billion-dollar industry, and they use as much science as they can get their hands on, right? They understand human behavior and how humans make choices, what kind of things interest us, and they use that science against us, right? They use it in order to sell their products. And so advertising is very good at manipulating us. It's very good at getting us to pay attention to things and making us want things, right? But at the same time, while advertising is selling us something, it's also teaching us about society. It's also socializing us in the process. But often we don't really notice it because we're paying attention to the sale or the pizza or whatever it might be, right? So let's look at some advertising, okay? So we see lots of ads for, especially if you watch TV on Saturday mornings, I think, you'll see lots of ads for toys, right? For children's toys. And I've just pulled some random toy images from the internet here, but I'd like to ask you, whose toys are these? Who are they made for? Yeah, boy. These we kind of intuitively understand as boys' toys, right? Yes, girls can play with them too, but we pretty quickly intuitively know that these are boys' toys, and which is fine, right? And so boys will see ads to sell these toys to them, and then they'll bug their parents and tell them this is what they want when they go to the toy store. But the question that I'm asking you here is, what kind of messages are transmitted to these young boys through the toys? What are they learning about gender and society from the toys that they play with? Boys are violent? Why? There's a lot of weaponry here so far, right? There's these kind of laser guns. The army guys have guns on the top of their Jeep thing there, right? Hawkeye has a bow and arrow. Captain America has a shield, which of course is a defensive thing, but he uses it as a weapon, yeah?
Yeah, Black Widow also uses a gun.
What's that?
Black Widow also uses a gun, right?
Black Widow also uses a gun. We can talk about her in a second, actually, maybe, but yeah, let's press pause on Black Widow for a second and come and stick with this. So, lots of weaponry, right? So it sort of teaches boys about violence, right? About using weapons on each other. And of course, I think if you've walked through the toy aisle in a store, you'll see lots of weapons, right? You'll see bows and arrows and guns and bazookas, and sometimes they shoot little Nerf bullets, sometimes they shoot water, sometimes they don't shoot anything, but yeah, there's lots of weapons. What other messages are being transmitted here?
Men have more power than women. The big side.
The sorry, what?
The men have more power than women. As you can see, this side of the bottom.
Yeah. There's a lot of ideas about power here, right? About men having power, and what kind of power do they have? We have what? There's some physical power being shown, right? So Captain America and Hawkeye and even Groot for some reason is ripped, even though he's a tree. They're all ripped, right? So there's a physical power thing, a muscularity. What kind of other power is here, though? I think there's two kinds of power, actually. So there's kind of a physical, muscular body power. What about the police car and the military?
Is it like you're a defender?
A defender?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, so a defender or protection, right? So they have some sort of like state power, right? They have power over others as the police or the military or some kind of thing, right? They have that kind of power. And there might be one other type of power too, and I'm thinking of the top right question, or the top right square. Is that one a little more tricky, maybe?
Top right.
Yeah, top right. I don't know. To me, like I think we could say, and maybe this will make more sense when we compare it to the girls' toys, but it's almost like a power to sort of to do things, right? To make things, to change the world, right? A fancy word you might use for this is agency, right? So if someone has agency, they have the ability to do something, right? To change the situation in some way. And so, yeah, those tools are like, yeah, you can do something, right? You can get out your tools and your backhoes and you can build something, right? A building or whatever it is. So, yeah, like we're seeing a lot of strength here, a lot of violence, a lot of kind of control and authority and agency, maybe some defensiveness and protectiveness, right? All of those are kind of being transmitted to kids. And kids get it, right? Kids will absorb these messages whether you tell them directly or not, and you're not telling them directly. Of course, if we look at some other toys, I think we intuitively know that these are girls' toys, right? Um, but I ask you, what kind of messages are being transmitted here? Sean said dominance for the boys' toys, and that's very true too, Sean. That's a good spot. Yeah, what kind of messages are coming through here? Yeah, there's a lot of domestic duties being shown here, right? The care of children, the cooking. Sorry, what else did you say, Tatoria?
They care about themselves, like the way they look.
Yeah. So there's the childcare, there's the cooking, and then there's also a lot of attention on appearance, right? Making themselves pretty, right? So you can see a little makeup table there for that little girl. Barbie, of course, is all about all about fashion and clothing and hair, right? Yes, she has lots of jobs, but really that's just an excuse for her to have different things to wear, right? At least in the toy. Yeah, so we're getting a lot of, like Basil says, we're getting a lot of motherly vibes here. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because this toy here on the bottom left, the little baby in the bathtub, how old of a child would probably play with a toy like that? Yeah, maybe quite young, right? Maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 years old, right? Give or take. Um, but it's interesting because like they're babies themselves, right? These girls are still babies, and what are we teaching them? We're teaching them how to take care of other babies, right? Almost immediately. Boys don't get that responsibility, right? Boys aren't taught to look after babies. They're taught to go out there and shoot each other with guns, right? That's a different message. Um, yeah, so lots of pink, lots of kind of domestic chores, lots of focus on appearance. Anything else being transmitted here to young girls? Yeah, so there's pink is definitely a girl's color, right? And of course, men can wear it too, and sometimes we do, but it's really a girl's color, and purple too, I would say. Pink and purple, little girls tend to really like those two colors, right? And again, all of this stuff is pink or purple, right? Yeah.
I'm just telling based on the picture, not my personal opinion.
Okay.
You're supposed to be in the picture, right? It's everything.
Well, that's kind of a
Not
that's
right.
that's part of the message, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that this is this is what you should be doing, right? This is what you should be interested in. This is where these are the activities that are appropriate for you, right? Taking care of babies, cooking, maybe making ice cream. Who doesn't love ice cream, but still. Um, and making yourself pretty, right? And paying attention to fashion. That's, those are the messages, right? And I think those are quite different from the messages we saw here, right? That were about dominance and agency and violence and strength, right? They're really different messages, right? And again, we start giving those messages to young people, almost immediately, right? Some of these toys are, yeah, maybe like 5 or 6 years old, right? There's probably some small parts to some of these, so you wouldn't want to give it to a baby sort of thing. But yeah, so a 5-year old or a 6-year-old, and same thing here. Whoops, same thing here. Probably young children, maybe a little bit older with some of these toys, right? But yeah, so even from the very earliest years, we are separating these kids out into their genders, and we're teaching them different things, right? The toys that we give them are training them for the rest of their lives, right? And we're kind of socializing these two genders into very different lives, I would say. Would you agree? Yeah, so we often see that in advertising that products are very strongly gendered, right? So if a product is being sold, marketers are trying to figure out who are we selling this to? Who is our audience? And in many cases is it a man or is it a woman, right? And so, if I showed you a bunch of foods here, for instance, even food can be gendered because are these kind of girl foods or boy foods? Or man foods or women foods, I guess I should say. Huh? Yeah, these are women's food, right? And yes, of course, men can and do eat them and enjoy all of those things, especially that chocolate cake. That thing looks killer. Good morning. So this is kind of women's food, right? And so, how do we know that this is? How do we know that this is kind of stereotypically women's food? It's light, and it's warm.
Light and it's like it's not a lot.
Okay, so we're not seeing like giant portions of things. The food is kind of light. What else?
The message that is passed is the girl is supposed to be thin.
They're supposed to what?
They're supposed to be thin when they are at their age. Like a message passed from the food.
Okay.
Which one the women are supposed to be thin.
They're supposed to be thin?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So because because women were taught that there is so much focus on their appearance, here they are, for the most part, paying attention to their health and to their eating, right? So here we have a nice healthy salad, right? Some nice yogurt with berries, right? That'll keep you slim as society decides, right? What about the drinks up there? Those are women. How do we know those are women's drinks? Huh?
It's colorful.
They're colorful.
There isn't a lot of drink.
There's not a lot of what? Okay. That's just yeah, it's not a big drink for sure, right? Those apple teenies, I think, is what they are. Yeah, they're colorful, they're kind of light, they're fun, right? Apple teenies are lots of fun. What's that?
They look elegant.
They look elegant, they kind of do. They kind of do. What about the chocolate cake? How do we know that's a kind of a woman food?
Chocolate.
Yeah, women like their chocolate, right? That's kind of that's a bit of a stereotype, right? Although it's not entirely untrue, but then again, who doesn't like chocolate, right? Psychopaths, that's who. Just kidding. So, contrast these with these foods. No, I'm kind of in the way there. Whoop. So, these I think we would understand as men's food, right? Why do we identify these as men's food?
A lot of meat.
A lot of meat, right? There's a lot of meat here. Gone is the concern for health and lightness. Here we want fat and protein and grill marks, right? That's what men want. What else do we see here? What else do we see in terms of men's food?
The liquid is
Right. So the alcohol here, maybe we have some whiskey or some scotch. I don't know why there's ice in it. That's horrible, but anyway. Here we have some whiskey or some scotch, but it's not watered down with any fruit juice or coloring or
not yet.
garnishes. Well, hopefully not, right? Because men are supposed to be tough, right? We just drink our alcohol straight up, right? There's the beer up there, right? Beer is a stereotypical man thing, right? And I think it came up in our alien exercise, right? Having a beer, was it having a beer with the boys? Yeah. So that actually came up in our rules for being a boy. Not only do you have to go out and have drinks with the boys, but it's got to be that drink right there, right? So that thing is kind of, within the man's sphere as well, right? And this is important, right? Because advertisers pay attention to these kind of stereotypes and ideas, and then they sell them back to us, right? So if I'm selling yogurt, if I'm selling Activia yogurt, who am I selling to? Yeah, I'm usually selling to women. Who do we often see in yogurt commercials? Women, right? But again, if I'm selling a nice cold beer, I'm selling that to men probably, right? So I've got to create a commercial that is appealing to men, right? And again, lots of women drink beer. Women eat meat, of course, duh, right? All of these things are consumed by both genders, but we have specific ideas about what genders kind of like what foods, right? And again, advertisers will sell that back to us, right? Women may prefer to eat yogurt more often than men. I don't know, I don't have the stats, but definitely advertisers are going to sell and market yogurt to women, right? Just the same way as they're going to sell and market beer to men, right? Have a look at this here. Oh, sorry, I've got one more. If you go to the bath section of Superstore while you're shopping, you'll again see things are gendered, right? So left or right, which is the woman's products? Left or right? Yeah, right? How do we know that this is for women? There's pink, right? What else?
There's a flower.
Yeah, the shampoo has a flower on the bottle, right? And I bet it smells like flowers too, right? It smells like some sort of spring meadow or something like that, right? But what's going on over on the other side here?
Honestly, I have no idea what that is.
It's I think it's 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, I think. I think that's what it is.
It's not good.
It's not what?
Not good.
It's not good stuff? Who
What
makes it?
type of wood?
Suave. Yeah, I don't have to worry about that so much. Actually, I do have to worry about it a little bit, otherwise my head gets dry. But there's a pretty big difference in how these things are marketed, right? What's that thing over on the far side?
No idea.
No idea.
You've never seen that thing?
before.
Well, that is this.
What?
Yeah, so here, this fluffy pink thing,
Yeah, I used that. I used the pink one.
me too. Right? Well, they're all, yeah, you see them in the drugstore and you just grab them off the little
Yeah.
thing, right? Doesn't matter. There's pink and purple and orange, blue.
I like the purple one.
You like the purple one? Does it clean better?
No, I just like the color.
Oh, okay. I haven't tried the purple one. I've only had the pink and the blue. Although the one I have now is actually a dark blue, shockingly, but I've had the pink before. Would recommend.
Does the job.
What's that?
It does the job.
It does the job. And it's fun. It's pink. So anyway, so here we have this fluffy pink loofah thing, which is very feminine. But of course, guys can't wash with that, right? Because guys are tough and rugged, right? And so what we have over here is kind of the man's version of it, or at least Axe's version of it, which is like, it looks like a truck tire with some sort of like scrubbing surface in the middle. So you can, what's that? It does look a little painful, right? It looks like something you would use to clean your tires on your truck. But indeed, no, it is something that,
It looks like a shoe shiner.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't look very, it looks like it might be tough on your skin, right? You will definitely exfoliate, for sure.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way. But again, look how these are products that are marketed to men and women. Do men have different skin than women?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe the rubber.
Well, I think they take better care of it. I'm not sure that it is necessarily different. Is women's hair different from men's? I don't think so. I think
I use women's shampoo.
Why?
It makes my hair softer. It smells better.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And yet, Ben, even though you use women's shampoo because it works better, shampoo manufacturers seem to feel the need to market directly to men, right? And, create a bottle that is not too feminine, right? That's a very masculine looking bottle, would you say? Right? Dark color, right? Nice dark blue, nice and simple. Men, it says on it, right? And here, we have something flowery for the women, right? Again, I would imagine these two products are not that different, really. They might work well for your hair, they might not. Everybody's hair is a little bit different, kind of thing. But again, you can see these things are very strongly gendered, right? Even though, again, I'm not so sure that, I think we've proven that men can use a loofah and it's just fine, right? And we've also proven that men can use women's shampoo and that works too, right? Actually, I am using women's shampoo because I got it from my partner, so. She was.
Actually, that's how it started for me.
Yeah, yeah. She's like, try this. I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, this is great. Mine is like, I think it's like rosemary and mint. Fantastic. Smells great. Okay, but it doesn't end there, right? It doesn't end there. So you probably won't see ads like this very often anymore because in Canada they are illegal.
I think everywhere.
Is it everywhere now?
Yeah. Except America.
Not everywhere.
Only in the US.
The U.S., yeah. Victoria, have you seen ads like this? Yeah. Where?
Usually we have a lot of ads on this and gambling.
And for what?
Gambling.
Oh, gambling. Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, we've got laws in Canada to limit the advertisements on cigarettes and gambling, right? They're both addictive. You don't need to sell them. People will buy them anyway. But back in the maybe 1980s, I'm guessing, those laws weren't passed, and so there was lots of cigarette ads everywhere you looked. And here you can pretty clearly see this strong gender advertising, right? So look on the left here with the camels. What kind of messages are we getting from this ad? What's this ad trying to tell? What's that?
It's manly to smoke.
It's manly to smoke, right? How do we know that?
Where a man belongs.
Oh, okay. So there's this slogan here, where a man belongs, and I guess he belongs smoking, but what else? He looks like a very manly man, right? Sitting there, leather jacket,
Oh, it was on the back.
on the back of a vintage motorcycle. Right? That's cool. Well, I don't know. It used to. Is smoking still cool or not?
Oh, not for me.
Not for you?
No.
Is smoking cool?
It's more of a bad habit.
It is a bad. Okay. So like when you see someone like, in a movie, let's say, smoking a cigarette, is it like, oh, that's cool, or is it like, oh, that's gross?
I feel neutral about it.
Okay.
I think I know it like Peaky Blinders.
Like what?
Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's probably smoking in there, right? Yeah.
Watching that makes you want to smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on the character, I guess. Yeah.
A friend of mine, he started smoking just because of Peaky Blinders.
Really?
This is a lot.
They've had a negative.
Oh.
So as soon as Peaky Blinders came on the air, suddenly, smoking increased.
Actually, I think so. I think that was a stat. Someone did a stat or something.
Well, it's possible, right? I mean, there was a time when smoking was super cool, and you went to the movies and everybody, like in those old black and white movies, everybody's smoking all the time, and it's very cool, right? And so, we
used to be able to smoke in cinemas.
used to be able to smoke everywhere.
But you get fined for that.
Yeah, thankfully. I used to work when I was about 20 or so. I used to work in a bar, and it was just before they started passing more rules in terms of indoor smoking. And yeah, like I would work in this bar, and of course everyone was smoking away. I didn't smoke, but my dad could tell. Like if I called him on the phone, he could tell if I worked the night before or not, because my voice would be really rough the next day, and of course my clothes stunk. Right, I'd have to wash them, and yeah, I don't know. It's cool, but also gross at the same time. I don't know. But here, anyway, we see on the left, again, these different messages, right? We're getting messages of, this ruggedness from the man, right? Where a man belongs, smoking his camels. He's out in nature, right? Out in the wilderness with his motorcycle. All of these things are kind of understood to be manly, right? So if you smoke camels, what will you be?
Camel.
What's that? No. You'll be manly, right? You'll be just like that guy, right? Cool. Different messages over here though, right on the right. What kind of messages are we receiving here? Can you read that? Actually, I'll get my head out of the way. Can you read that? It says, according to the theory of evolution, men evolved with fat, stubby fingers, and women evolved with long, slim fingers. Therefore, according to the theory of logic, women should smoke the long, slim cigarette designed for them. And this is the theory of slimness. So what are we what are we supposed to understand from this ad? What kind of messages are we being given? Yeah, so the Virginia Slims here, the actual cigarette is longer and slimmer, right? The stuff inside is probably the same as the Camels, more or less, but the shape is different, right? What else do you think that the advertiser is trying to? What other messages are they trying to send?
That the women have their own cigarettes and the men have their own.
Yes, but why? Why do women? Actually, let's press pause on that for a second. I would like to come back to that. Why this focus on slimness?
Helps you lose weight.
Well, yeah, right. Here we have another appeal to women's appearance, right? Over here with the Camels, it's not really about appearance, right? It's about being rugged, masculine, right? Here again, we have more emphasis on appearance, right? And slimness as a cultural value, right? This model here is quite slim, right? The cigarettes are slim. And what's the message? If you smoke these, you too will be slim, right? Which is not entirely, that's not entirely incorrect. It's an appetite suppressant, right? But still, we get this message of femininity is slimness, right? And of elegance, right? This woman is dressed up, she looks like she's going out for the night, right? The earrings and the nice dress and the whole thing and the heels, right? And she's got this very classy, very sophisticated cigarette to smoke, right? So a little more focus on elegance and class and sophistication, but also on slimness, right? And appearance. Whereas the man isn't sold any of those things, right? The man is sold kind of ruggedness, individuality, toughness, strength, right? Those things all kind of come through. And again, it's always the same kind of message, isn't it? When you go back all the way through the food and the boys' toys, the boys and the men are continually being told, strength, toughness, independence, right? Women are constantly being sold, look pretty, look slim, dress nice, right? And other things too. But we're seeing some of these same threads, right, that we're taught over and over and over again, right? And so, again, it's probably only natural that eventually we start thinking that these things are biologically true, right? Because we keep hearing them over and over and over again. Okay, Malika, you asked, well, what did you ask a minute ago? How did you phrase it?
I said, the woman has their own cigarettes and the man has their own.
Right, and so why do we have two different types of cigarettes here? Are cigarettes not just cigarettes? Right? The shape of them doesn't really make that much of a difference. Well, what's interesting here is that the cigarettes are gendered and they're marketed to different genders, to men and women. But what's also interesting is that men will not smoke women's cigarettes, right? But women will smoke men's cigarettes. So you would find women smoking Camels, but you wouldn't find many men smoking Virginia Slims. Why would you say that is?
They're not as strong.
What's that?
They're not as strong. Like the women's cigarette.
Okay.
They're not as strong as the men's ones.
Okay, so men might think that those cigarettes are not as strong. Okay.
Men usually are more like afraid to fit in society and like smoking and something that's meant to be for a woman, or either scared to be associated with that.
Yeah, and where does that fear come from? Why do men not want to sort of borrow things from the world of women, and yet women will kind of borrow things from the world of men?
No.
Norms? Maybe.
Generations of it.
Generations of it.
Because when baby boy wants to use Barbie, I think most of the people tell him don't do it. But when the baby girl wants to use ball, I think it's okay or something else.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That's interesting too, where there's. I don't know if we have space to get into this now, but some things are gendered female, but there's not many things that are just gendered male, right? So here, look at, so like you mentioned there's a perfect example. A Barbie is a girl's toy, but a ball is just a toy, right? Look at what I'm wearing now. Online people, can't see everything I'm wearing. Look at what I'm wearing now, okay? Could a woman wear exactly what I'm wearing and would it be fine? Yeah, right? Because the clothing I'm wearing is not really gendered, right? But there's lots of female clothing, female specific clothing that is gendered, right? Can you think of many items of clothing that are just strictly for men that women just do not wear ever? Huh? Maybe.
Some women wear ties.
Maybe a tie, yeah. Some women will wear a tie though, from time to time. Yeah. What's that?
Our underwear?
What's that?
Our underwear?
Our underwear?
They wear it.
I don't know, maybe. Anything else?
Swimming trunks.
Okay.
You don't see a woman wearing swimming trunks.
That's true. You do know. Okay, that's.
What? Even that? We can't have anything.
No, we can't. But did you have something, Rafay? No. So that's kind of interesting, right? That we've got all this clothing that is for women specifically, and yet there's no clothing for men. This is all men's clothes is kind of just clothes, right? Just non-gendered clothing. Do you want to take one more crack at this? Why men might borrow from, or women might borrow from the world of men, but men will not borrow from the world of women?
Men are usually the provider, so we give women who they want to take from them clothing.
Oh, interesting.
But it just doesn't seem normal if you see me wearing skirts, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's true, right? It wouldn't seem normal for a woman to sort of, or a man to sort of borrow something from women, right? But women can borrow things from men all the time, right? Isn't that the classic thing that they do in like high school where you wear your boyfriend's football jacket. Isn't that a classic thing that gets done, right?
But this happened recently, like for example, in the 50s, women couldn't take the men clothes either. It's just a feminist thing that happened.
That's true, right? So there's, yeah, the sort of the blurring of lines between gendered clothing, that's definitely true, right? So if you went back, to the 1950s, there was women's clothes and men's clothes and not a lot of overlap between them. That's very true. That is very true. Maybe I'll tell you what I want to point out, and then we'll take a break because we've been working for a while here. So it has to do with power. Who has power in society? Hey,
Can I have a cup?
a cup. This cup?
Yeah.
Certainly you may. Sorry, we're just talking about cigarettes
Oh.
and how cool they are.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Oh, are you?
Just this two.
Oh, that too? Okay.
I think we're good.
Coolio.
Power, people. Be good.
Stay in school.
Stay in school.
Okay. So, what I want to point out here is it has to do with power. Okay. So, usually what will happen is that the dominant group will not borrow things from the minoritized group because it's kind of a loss of status, right? Whereas the minoritized group will borrow from the dominant group because they will gain it, right? So how many times have you seen, maybe in movies or television shows, this woman who's like, she's wearing jeans and a leather jacket and she's like drinking straight whiskey and you're like, oh, that chick is so badass, right? Seen this before, and again, she can kind of gain a certain amount of masculinity and toughness by sort of borrowing a few things from the world of men, right? And again, there's different sort of things that she might borrow, but she can kind of make herself, they can portray her as, a tough cookie kind of thing. But you don't often see women or men borrowing too much from the world of women, right? That doesn't really play the same way. And Billy Porter aside, because he's a different story, but it kind of shows us the direction of power. Who borrows from whom? Does that make some sense? Now, the only thing I can't explain is situations of cultural appropriation. So where one culture, say Western culture, will borrow things from other world cultures and it's cool. That kind of goes against my explanation, so I don't know how to explain that one. But often what you'll see is minoritized groups will borrow from the dominant group, but it won't work the other way around. And so in this case, women will smoke men's cigarettes because it will make them seem tough and cool, but men will not smoke women's cigarettes because it will make them seem effeminate and weak, right? Even if the cigarettes themselves are not any different. They might be, I'm not sure. Okay, let's take a break. Good morning. You're just in time for the break. Let's take a break. We'll come back and then we'll talk a little bit about TV and movies, okay? All right. And we are back. So we've been talking about, oh, I used a fancy word there. Discourses of sexism in advertising, right? So discourses are things that people say, okay? So things that are being said about a certain topic. So this has to do with sexism that's kind of coming through in our advertising, right? And we said that, you know, from our very earliest years when we're playing with toys, we are given messages about what our gender is like, right? What kind of things we should play with, what kind of things, how we should play, what kind of things we should be interested in and paying attention to. And again, those messages are different almost from the very beginning, right? Almost from the very first toys that we, you know, maybe when we're little babies, maybe we get little stuffies in our crib and things like that. But as soon as we're kind of big enough to walk around and start playing with things on our own, we are being given messages about our gender, right? And what our gender should be like. Now, we also see that, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit here. Actually, no, I'm going to jump back. So as we kind of continually are advertised to, and as we use products and desire products and buy them, as that happens, we continually absorb the social messages from advertising. And most of the time, advertising will normalize things as they already are, right? Or they'll normalize certain kind of stereotypes, right? So if I'm selling laundry detergent, right, to wash my clothes, who am I probably selling that to, men or women? Women, right? Now, obviously men have to wash their clothes too, right? And if you are single and living alone, you have to buy your own laundry detergent and wash your own clothes, right? But again, most of the time, the laundry is seen as women's work, right? Or that's at least the traditional stereotypical view of it. And so almost always, if you see a commercial on TV for laundry detergent, you're going to see mom, right? You're going to see mom with a clothes basket. She's running around the house, right? There's kids and a dog, and she's like, my house is so chaotic, I don't have time for stains, or whatever, you know, however those go, right? And we see it, and again, we don't really notice it because it's so normal, right? Mom taking care of the kids, doing the laundry is so normal that it doesn't trip anything in our brain, right? So, you know, we focus entirely on the laundry detergent, right? Because that's what they're trying to sell us, and they only have 25 seconds of airtime to sell it, right? They don't want to give us something like, oh, I don't know, a gay couple with one man doing the laundry. They don't want to show us that because, again, some people may be upset because they're homophobic, but also because it gets in the way of the message, right? If they show us two gay men with one man doing the laundry, suddenly people are paying attention to that, right? And they're like, oh, look, there's two gay men in this ad. Isn't that interesting? Gee, I haven't seen that before. Have you seen that before? No, I haven't seen that before. And before you know it, the commercial's over and you're like, well, what was that for again? Right? So advertisers don't want to show you things that are kind of outside of your stereotypical experience because then you get distracted with it, right? So they'll always show you the thing you expect to see, right? So again, laundry detergent, you'll see mom, right? If you're selling a lawnmower, who are you going to see? Dad, right? Dad's going to be out there mowing the lawn, right? And so, again, these kind of stereotypical jobs will be normalized and reproduced because advertisers don't want you to get distracted, right? They don't want you to pay attention to something different happening in the ad and then forget about the product they're trying to sell, right? Unless it's one of those ads where they're just trying to be memorable, right? Like the Super Bowl ads where they're just trying to outdo everyone else in terms of a crazy ad, right? So again, we kind of normalize certain jobs for men and women, certain things that they like or that they dislike. It also normalizes sort of traditional family arrangements, right? So we usually see mom and dad and the two kids and the dog, right? We don't often see two gay men and their adopted child, right? We don't often see two lesbian women, right, and their children. We don't often see those kinds of things, right? Because again, it distracts from the product that people are trying to sell. So advertisers aren't trying to do anything wrong, but in the process of selling, they are normalizing certain types of situations, right? And again, you're probably not going to see. Have you ever seen an ad for laundry soap with a man in it, where the man is doing the laundry? I've seen one, and it was a guy and his son kind of out, by the garage shooting hoops, right? So the man and his son are out there shooting hoops, and then when they're done, they're all sweaty, and so they take off their shirts and throw them in the washing machine with the laundry soap, right? And I was like, yeah, you couldn't have done a whole load. Like you're just gonna wash the two shirts that you got sweaty and like forget about the rest of the household. Anyway, but it was interesting that again, in order for the men to do the laundry, they kind of had to do something manly first, right? And then they do the laundry. They weren't doing the laundry for the whole house kind of thing, because that's what mom does. Victoria, you're kind of like, no? You don't like? Yeah. No, and certainly, I'm explaining these things and I don't like them either. Like I'm not saying any of this is the way it should be, but to some degree it's the way it is. Although those things are changing, right? Like people are becoming more aware of that kind of thing, and so you are seeing more diversity now than you used to.
Some of us rather be stay-home dads.
Sure. Sure, and that's okay too, right? But we'll get to the stay-home dad thing a little bit later. We could also get to the Black Widow thing. What did you want to say about Black Widow?
Like, as Victoria said, all of the guys' toys, they're violent because they're guys.
Yep.
And that's not true because Black Widow also makes that, right?
She does. So is she?
Are you talking about the spider or the Marvel character?
The Marvel character,
Okay.
right? God, if spiders are using guns now, like, I'm out. Say that again?
But what about Tom Brady?
For the lonely
She's.
Yeah.
What's that?
boys. It's for the lonely boys.
Well, that's true, right? So Black Widow comes from a universe, well, from a media form that is mostly for boys, right? Yes, girls read comics too, absolutely. But is it probably the majority boys? I would think so, right? So yes, she's a kind of a superhero like the others. She's a member of the Avengers. Yes, she uses guns just like guys do. But what were you saying about the lonely boys thing?
What?
What were you saying about that?
Nothing more to comment on that.
No, I want you to comment on that. I think there's something to be said there.
Something about like those boys, those lonely boys, it's something to fantasize about, I guess.
Right. So, is she the same as the other characters? Are she and Captain America the same kind of character?
No.
Why not? That's true. They don't play the same role. Would you say, if we assume that maybe not so much the movies, but the comic books, if we assume that they're a medium that is created for boys and for young men, would you say that a character like Black Widow is more sexualized than any of the male characters. Yeah, and why would we think that, or what would be the evidence of that?
Well,
The issue is drawn.
Okay, which is?
Hourglass body.
Yeah. So there, and you could probably say that all female comic book characters are drawn in a very unrealistic fashion, right? I don't know. Is she more sexualized than? I mean, everybody's like in a comic, everyone's wearing skin tight spandex, right? Like if you look at Spider-Man, there's nothing left to the imagination there, right? You can see every muscle he has. But I don't know, is she different? Or is she the same? Oh, so even though, so if we look at sort of the body types of male versus female superheroes, yes, the male superheroes are muscular and ripped and, you know, holy cow, right? But the women are built in a way that is like almost physically unattainable, right? You could spend time in the gym and, you know, get a muscular body, but you can't re-engineer your skeletal structure to, you know, to look like female comic book characters. So so I guess there's less realism in terms of versus how women really look and how women are drawn in comic books, right? I don't know, what else can we say about that? It's true. It's definitely true. I don't know, maybe we don't have a lot of comic book readers here. Yeah. So yeah, so there's a difference in how like characters behave, right? Whether the show is made for a girl's audience or a boy's audience, right? Definitely. I don't know, I'm kind of torn with her because Black Widow's interesting now because she's, you know, yes, she is very sexualized within the comic books and to some degree within the movies.
I think only the first few.
She's been made kind of an equal partner in the Avengers, right? She's one of them, even though she doesn't really have any superpowers. But at the same time, it's taken her a very long time to get her own movie, has it not?
Oh yeah, people get upset.
Yeah, I mean, how many we had like 3 Captain America movies, 3 Iron Man movies, 2 Thors or 3? 3 Thors.
The fourth one coming.
What's that?
There's a fourth one.
There's a 4th one coming, yeah, which hopefully the Black Widow movie will make it out before.
Yeah, Black Widow's first.
We had 2 Hulk movies or 3 Hulk movies with different actors. Multiple Spider-Mans. But
We still have no Hawkeye.
what's that?
We still have no Hawkeye.
We still have no Hawkeye. I'm okay with that.
I think that one Jeremy Renner didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, so we so
Scarlet, I mean, it was sort of Scarlet Witch.
Oh.
A TV show. So,
A Wonder Baby?
yeah.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I guess she got her own show before Black Widow does. But Black Widow's had to wait a long time, right? Like we've had movie after movie after movie with the male leads, and you know, finally, when did this whole Marvel thing start? 10 years?
11. So?
The first Iron Man was only 12?
2007.
2007? Okay, so 14 years? Yeah, it took her 14 years to get her own movie. I don't know, that's a long time, right? So it's interesting, right, to look at, you know, how female characters are portrayed in the comics, the degree of, you know, kind of unrealism in terms of how they're portrayed, and then once they go to the big screen, you know, is she treated equally, right? Is she treated as a sex object, or is she one of the Avengers, right? And I would say to some degree, I think both, right? And I think it is telling that she didn't receive her own movie until now. I haven't seen the new one, obviously, but from the trailers, it looks like they could have made that movie at any point. Like it doesn't hinge on.
Should have been made before Avengers Endgame, like much more before.
Yeah, but it doesn't really like it's more on her backstory, right? So it doesn't rely on any sort of Endgame, Infinity War.
Said that it's part of like the phase 2 they're doing for the next decade, like what they're building up to.
Yeah, but I'm saying they didn't need any. Nothing's going to happen in Black Widow that they needed to happen to tell the rest of that Infinity saga, right? So it could have been told. That story could have been told at any point, but wasn't. So I don't know. She's an interesting thing to think about, right? Although, I don't know. Do you think that we've only got a couple minutes left here, so we may as well talk about this? Do you think they treated her character equally, even if she didn't get her own movie within the movies?
She did play an important role.
I feel like she was very impactful.
Yeah.
Which is very what?
Impactful.
Impact.
Especially in the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, she has a.
I mean, you do kind of see her from being just like a side character to becoming one of the main characters throughout. Like in Iron Man 3, I think she became a main character already.
Yeah. Yeah, she becomes. Yeah, I think she becomes one of. She becomes an equal member of the team, I would say. Yeah, I don't know. They'll dig into that a little bit. That might be interesting.
Start counting the minutes.
Start what?
The screen time.
Screen time. Well, screen time doesn't. Oh, we'll talk about that a little bit later, or we'll talk about that tomorrow too. Okay, tell you what, we'll end it there. Tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about sexism in movies. Maybe I'll try and find something on Black Widow since we're talking about it. But yeah, you can pack it up, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay.